Hello everyone, my name is Aaron. Today I'm looking ahead to the Gran Premio del Made in Italy dell'Emilia Romagna. Should we just go with the Imola Grand Prix instead? Yeah, that's easier. My name's Aaron. Strap in, it's time for the 5 red lights.
1 light, 2 lights, 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights, and it's go!
Welcome to a new episode, everyone. Before we get started, if you're watching on YouTube, I'd urge you to like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And if you're listening on the go, please rate and subscribe or follow if you're listening via Spreaker, Google Podcast, or on Spotify. Also follow my Twitter page, 5_red_lights, my Instagram, 5redlights, and check out my blog, 5redlights.wixsite.com/5redlightspodcast. I think that's everything, which means we can now crack on with everything else. So where are we? We are approaching round 2 of the season, and of course we had the sensational Bahrain Grand Prix. So let's just recap that first. It was Max Verstappen and Red Bull living up to the hype of pre-season testing by having the fastest car, and they duly took pole position. However, they were beaten by Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, who drove a brilliant race, working a fantastic strategy to get Hamilton track position, and it was a race win worthy of a knight and a 7 times world champion. There were points on debut for Yuki Tsunoda, while it was a weekend to forget for Aston Martin and their new driver Sebastian Vettel, who qualified 18th, started last, crashed with Ocon, and ended up finishing 15th. So that's where we are. That was Bahrain. Let's look ahead to the Grand Prix at Imola this weekend. So let's start with the teams that are going to be enjoying a home race this weekend. Imola, of course, is in a beautiful part of the Italian state of Emilia-Romagna near Bologna, which is fairly close to Maranello, home of Ferrari. Thus, it is home of the Tifosi. But they're not the only Italian-based team. We have Ferrari, we have AlphaTauri, and of course Alfa Romeo. Now, judging by Bahrain, and of course we've only seen the cars running at Bahrain, given that they tested there and they had the first race there. The 2 Italian teams of AlphaTauri and Ferrari could again be very close on the track. If you think back to Sakir, Charles Leclerc and Pierre Gasly were best of the rest behind Max Verstappen and the 2 Mercedes cars. McLaren ended up ahead of Ferrari in the race, with Leclerc finishing behind Lando Norris, who took 4th, and ahead of Ricciardo. Sergio Perez also got ahead of Charles for 5th late on, but he had a slightly different strategy after some of his issues earlier on. Not quite sure where Pierre Gasly would have stacked up in all of that, because he broke his front wing early on, actually when he was behind Daniel Ricciardo. So can't really be completely sure of what the potential of that AlphaTauri is, but for my money, that thing looks like a rocket ship in the midfield. They've taken a big leap forward. They threatened to be at the sharp end of the midfield on a few occasions last season, and I think they're going to be there or thereabouts more often this season. They had a good car last season, and in 2021 they've definitely made a step forward. And you know, you look at Yuki Tsunoda's race, and that's where the real proof of that comes from. Well, some of it anyway. He was able to cut through the midfield after a slow start, and he got himself up to 9th place. If you look back at Imola last year, when it was held, it was like early November, I think it was. It was almost Christmas, and we're at Imola, which was bizarre. Of course, Gasly smashed out a fantastic Q3 lap to line up 4th on the grid before his Honda power unit developed an issue after the start, and he was forced to retire. So AlphaTauri are probably going to be there or thereabouts, but what about the big brand of Ferrari, the home of the Tifosi? I don't think there's going to be any fans there this weekend. Hopefully we can have fans back at races very, very soon. I know in the UK where I live, we're moving very quickly towards people back into stadiums and people being able to go back into shops and stuff like that, but I'm not too sure on where other countries are. Ferrari have made some gains. They had a rubbish season last year, didn't they? And that's just putting it mildly. And they've made gains with both the engine and the chassis, but it's not really the sort of gains that they were talking about or probably hoping for, and that are going to propel them back to challenging for victories. But Bahrain was a good start because they've got to build this team back up after what they went through last year. Charles and Carlos both picked up points in Bahrain. That's a good start for them. Sainz drove well in Imola last year, actually beating his then McLaren teammate Lando Norris, so he'll be looking to close the gap on his new teammate again here. And he even said that he drove cautiously on the opening lap. He was cautious the whole weekend. I suppose if you're moving to a new team and you're moving to a team like Ferrari, then that's probably the best way to do it. You know, unless you're going to do what Kimi Raikkonen did and pitch up in Australia, put it on pole and take the win. You know, taking a sensible route is probably the best way to go, because you don't want to get off to a bad start with Ferrari. That only ends up going in one direction. So Carlos is a sensible boy. He got himself to the flag. He picked up some points, and I think he'll improve again at Imola. Remember, there's 22 races still to go this season, so the development curve for any new driver within the sport and in a new team is going to be steep, but they're going to get up there really quickly, I think. Let's have a look at Gasly. He's the one, I think, who will be challenging for AlphaTauri against Ferrari. Ferrari, I think, will be there or thereabouts alongside AlphaTauri. Whether they're ahead of McLaren is a big question mark, because McLaren have got a decent car, didn't really get on top of it in qualifying in Bahrain, but Norris came through and finished fourth. Ricciardo had damage from the contact with Gasly, which hampered his race, so potentially they could have had fourth and fifth or fourth and sixth. So I'd expect McLaren to be a touch ahead of those two. And Gasly has got a bit of a point to prove this weekend, because he's been getting even less love than normal from Dr. Helmut Marko and the Red Bull management over the break. Helmut Marko claimed Max Verstappen would have been 2/10 quicker in Bahrain if he was in the AlphaTauri than what Gasly produced. Come on, Helmut. Give the boy some credit when it's due. It just makes you look stupid, doesn't it? Because who knows what Verstappen could have achieved in that car. He could have got in that car and Gasly could have outperformed him. You never know. You never know. So that's the first two Italian teams. What of Alfa Romeo? They've had a boost from the Ferrari power unit, and they're on the back of the midfield. That's an improvement for them. It's not a huge amount better than where they were last season in the grand scheme of things, but they'll be hopeful of grabbing some points this time around after finishing 11th and 12th in Bahrain for Kimi and Antonio respectively. Who's going to come out on top for the Italian teams? I'm going to hedge my bets. I'm going to go for Gasly. He's going to get one over on Ferrari, and Alfa Romeo is going to be he's not going to be the fastest in qualifying, but he's going to finish ahead of them in the race. They're going to have enough to go through with the strategy and perhaps undercut Ferrari on the Sunday. So the big talking point from Bahrain was the battle between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen in the closing stages. This is round 2. Now, we were all salivating over the closing stages of the Bahrain Grand Prix as Max closed on Lewis, and Lewis got track position through that bold Mercedes strategy, and the battle culminated in that incident at Turn 4 where Hamilton managed to push his Dutch rival wide and caused him to fall foul of the track limits, thus allowing him to regain the lead because Max had to hand it back. The tension and the excitement were served in equal measure, and we actually had something to discuss after the race, but unfortunately it's track limits, and that's about as popular in F1 as VAR is in football. So where will we be this weekend with those two? Red Bull are going to be confident that their car will be able to challenge for the pole position on the Saturday, and given how Max was able to split the two Mercedes cars in 2020, we could be on for another battle like Bahrain. Now, of course, Mercedes locked out the front row in Imola, and Max then got between them at the start, but he was close enough on pace to hang on to that position all the way through. Mercedes may find themselves needing to pull out another wonder strategy from the bag, which may again work in their favour, given how tough passing on the narrow Imola track can be. But I think Red Bull are going to be alert to this, and likely a touch more conservative, because they allowed Hamilton to have the undercut. Even though they're in front, I think they can still drive the strategy, especially if Perez is on the coattails of Bottas or Hamilton. So it's very important that they get Perez through Q2. It might be worth them sticking him if say for instance they're qualifying on the mediums. I'm not sure what the tyre compounds are for this weekend yet, and who knows how they're going to work as well, because it could be chilly. I think, given some research from the weather forecasting, it's going to be sort of mid-teens, sort of like 15 degrees. So how that interacts with the tyres, the new heavier, stronger tyres, it might allow them to qualify on the mediums. It might mean they all have to qualify on the softs. But if they can do something different with Perez, if the front three are going on the mediums, having Perez on the softs and perhaps driving through and coming at the Mercedes from behind may just allow Verstappen to drive the strategy that way, by avoiding being undercut by the team, using Perez to put pressure on the Mercedes, and then Verstappen pitting first. Mercedes, of course, were on the back foot in Bahrain, and they've made improvements between testing and the opening race. Given that we've had a further 3 weeks between the first race in Bahrain and this one, and they've had that whole race weekend's worth of data to go through at their disposal and plug into their very clever simulation tools, how much more lap time will they have gained and clawed back against Red Bull? Knowing Mercedes, probably plenty. They've shown over the years that they can get on top of many issues, and they beat Ferrari, even though they probably didn't have the outright fastest car for much of 2017 or 2018. Now, watch out for a repeat of last year, where a safety car or a virtual safety car really threw things up in the air and changed the whole picture of the race at the front. Of course, Hamilton was third, and then there was the VSC because he'd run long. He was able to pit and come out ahead of Bottas, who had picked up a piece of 2020 Ferrari, which slowed him down significantly. Talking of Bottas, he's going to want to join the party at the front, having had an underwhelming start to the season in the desert night race. Perhaps if he hadn't had the slow second pit stop, he could well have been in between Hamilton and Verstappen and been a bit of a blocker, but then we might not have got the tense finish that we did. Ultimately though, Bottas needs to have his sauna, eat his porridge, swig his espresso, and come out swinging in the Italian countryside, because if he doesn't get on top of things quickly and it becomes a match-up between Verstappen and Hamilton, he's very quickly going to find himself being the wingman that he so hates. So then, to conclude the episode, the preview episode of the Imola Grand Prix, here are my predictions. Of course, I want your input, so just pop them in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. Tweet me if you are listening on the go. Just find a way to get in contact. Pop them in somehow and we can discuss who we think is going to come out on top. Now, my pole position, which I think I got correct in Bahrain, and I'm going to repeat it here, hopefully. I've gone for Max Verstappen. I think the Red Bull is just faster over one lap. It has that stability. I don't think they have the party modes anymore. I haven't heard them talking about the engine settings anymore. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm assuming they're staying as they were after Monza last year, which I think was a shame, because I think that's part of the skill of a racing driver, is to know how and when to use the power of his engine and how to manage that through the season. But it is what it is, and I'm going for Max Verstappen on pole position in Imola, and I'm going to tip him to win the race as well, because if he gets a good start, I think as long as Perez is there on the Mercedes tail, that will be enough to prevent Mercedes performing like a pincer movement on him, like they tried to in Bahrain, or even undercutting him. Red Bull are going to be wise to that. They're going to make sure that he gets away, builds a gap, and if he's not going to build a gap, they're going to get him in first. So they might actually push harder, see if Hamilton wants to chase. If Hamilton doesn't want to chase, then they'll open the gap, pit early, and retain the lead. If Hamilton does chase, they'll be banking on Hamilton's tyres wearing out in the dirty air. That's if Hamilton is. I'm assuming Hamilton's in second place in this scenario. Of course, it could be Mazepin. Who knows? Anything can happen in Formula One. It usually does. So my top three for the race: Max Verstappen is going to be my winner, and Lewis Hamilton is going to be my second place, not Nikita Mazepin. Sorry, Nikita, you're not getting anywhere near the podium, dude. So Hamilton in second, and I'm going to go with Sergio Perez as my third place. I think he's going to just have a stronger weekend. Of course, Bottas did excel here in Imola last year, but I think the Red Bull has just got a bit more, and Perez has got a point to prove. We've seen him working hard in the gym, so he's prepared. Let's hope Bottas hasn't been having too many days in the sauna. And of course, moving to my final prediction, a bold prediction. Of course, my previous bold prediction in Bahrain was that Alonso and Vettel would both be eliminated in Q2, or at least not make Q3. Vettel failed to get out of Q1, but Fernando Alonso made Q3. So I didn't quite get that one correct. But this week's bold prediction is that Nikita Mazepin finishes the race. I did toy with the idea of just that he finishes the first lap, but I mean, come on, even he isn't that incompetent. So Nikita Mazepin to finish the race is my bold prediction, because, well, that Haas looks difficult to drive. He is probably a touch heavy on the loud pedal, and there are gravel traps aplenty, and they're just waiting to gobble you up if you make a mistake. So they're my predictions. Pole position for Max Verstappen, victory for Max Verstappen, podiums of Verstappen, Hamilton and Perez. My bold prediction is that Nikita Mazepin finishes the... Where was it? No, we're just going to go with Imola Grand Prix. I'm not going to try and read it out again. That's just too much. They're my predictions. Let me know yours. Pop them in the description. Not in the description. That's my bit. Put them in the comments down below. So that's all for today. That's the end of the episode. We are going to be looking forward to this weekend's race. It should be absolutely fascinating to see how that battle between Red Bull and Mercedes develops at the front. Of course, there is so much going on in the midfield. How Aston Martin going to get on? Are Alpine going to be able to make a resurgence? And what can McLaren produce, given that they probably have about the third fastest car? And of course, everyone's going to be looking out for Mazepin to see how many times he is Mazaspin. If you missed the episode last week, it was a short episode, given that there was a break between post-race and pre-race. And I have decided to do a Driver of the Month vote. I'll leave a link in the description down below for you to get involved in that, which is already open, so you can go on and vote for your Driver of the Month, which includes the Bahrain Grand Prix and the race at Imola. Once that is closed, which I think closes 3 or 4 days after the Grand Prix this weekend, I'll take the results, put a video together, and you can see who comes out on top there for you guys. As I said at the beginning, if you enjoy the episode, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, rate, follow if you're listening on the go. Generally, just get in touch, connect. I want to be chatting to all of you as much as possible. I love Formula One, and of course, if you're watching this, I'm sure you do too. So let's connect, let's chat, and let's enjoy the racing this weekend in Imola. That's all for today. My name's Aaron. This has been the Five Red Lights. When the Five Red Lights go out at Imola, I will see you next time. Bye for now.